A woman lives with 32 men on a deserted island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean after a shipwreck. At first, they work together to survive, hunting, gathering, and waiting for rescue. But soon, the desire for possession, instincts, and power turned this place into a deadly battleground. Mysterious disappearances occurred. Many were murdered. Over 6 years of being stranded, the 32 men dwindled down to just 19 survivors. What exactly happened here? Would the only woman be protected, or would she join the list of unfortunate victims? Don't take your eyes off the screen. Unravel the most thrilling mysteries and chilling secrets you've never heard before. Before we begin, hit like and subscribe to make sure you don't miss the next stories. In 1939, under Japan's migration policy, thousands of Japanese citizens left their homeland to settle on Pacific islands occupied by Japan. Kazuko Higa, a 16-year-old girl, was one of them. She left Okinawa with her brother to Saipan in search of a new life. There, she worked as a cafe employee and quickly became the center of attention due to her striking appearance. Among her admirers, Shoichi Higa, a young man from Okinawa, successfully won Kazuko's heart. They fell in love and got married when Kazuko turned 18. In 1944, as the war expanded, Shoichi was reassigned to Anatahan, a small, isolated island in the ocean. He brought Kazuko along, unaware he was leading her into an inescapable trap. Anatahan, a deserted island in the Pacific, 9 kilometers long, spanning 33 square kilometers, with a volcano nearly 800 meters high. At the time, around 20 native residents lived on the island, and Shoichi's job was to oversee their work. News from nearby islands indicated that Japan was losing the war. Shoichi began worrying about his sister, who was still on a nearby island. One night, after receiving unclear information about his sister's situation, Shoichi decided to leave Anatahan to find her. He promised Kazuko he would return soon, but he never came back. Shoichi's disappearance devastated Kazuko. At that point, the only Japanese left on the island were her and Kiku Ichiro, Shoichi's employer, as the others had fled due to fear of the war. Left with no other choice, Kazuko had to rely on Kiku to survive. Over time, they lived together as an unwilling couple. However, this peace didn't last long. The US military began bombing the island, destroying everything from plantations to essential supplies. Kazuko and Kiku were forced to hide in the jungle to survive. After the bombing, they found the entire island devastated. All essential supplies were gone, leaving only 40 pigs and 20 chickens. While trying to rebuild their lives, an unexpected event occurred. On June 12, 1944, 4 fishing boats were attacked by the US military near the island. 3 sank completely, and only a few survivors swam to Anatahan. A total of 31 men survived, including 10 naval officers and 21 young sailors. Initially, the 31 survivors believed the island to be deserted, with no signs of life. But during a fruit-gathering trip, they stumbled upon Kazuko and Kiku Ichiro. They were shocked to find Japanese people already living on the island. Kazuko and Kiku Ichiro, after living in isolation for so long, were overjoyed to see fellow Japanese arriving on the island. The pair quickly shared their food, water, and even helped treat the injuries of the new arrivals. As the population increased, the issue of food supply became critical. They soon consumed all 40 pigs and 20 chickens. Left with no other options, they turned to wild fruits, crabs, and seafood to survive. On August 15, 1945, Japan surrendered and declared defeat. But on Anatahan, no one was aware of this. In reality, there had been attempts to leave, but all tools for building or repairing boats had been destroyed, leaving the group stranded. And when one woman is stranded among 32 men, what do you think would happen? Moreover, most of the men were in their prime, full of desire, and all their attention turned to Kazuko Higa. Recognizing the potential for explosive conflicts, some wise individuals proposed a solution. They persuaded Kazuko and Kiku Ichiro to marry in front of everyone. The purpose was to affirm that Kazuko was taken, aiming to reduce disputes and jealousy. The wedding was simple yet solemn, held in the middle of the jungle. Kazuko and Kiku Ichiro, despite not having real feelings for each other, agreed to the marriage to stabilize the situation. After the wedding, they moved to a secluded corner of the island, living independently, away from the rest of the group. This solution seemed effective at first. Life on the island became more peaceful. but this peace did not last long. In August 1946, a group of people discovered the wreckage of a crashed American bomber deep in the jungle. Inside the wreckage, they found various supplies, including parachutes and clothing. However, what truly changed the situation were 4 damaged pistols and 90 rounds of ammunition. They managed to repair 2 of the 4 pistols. Those with military experience quickly became the new power holders on the island. These 2 men were Yamamoto and Yamaguchi. They immediately used their weapons to impose authority over the rest of the group. And of course, Kazuko was their primary target. They ordered her and Kiku to move back and live under their control. They did not hesitate to eliminate anyone who dared challenge them or showed any interest in Kazuko. One man, after expressing his admiration for Kazuko, was immediately executed by Yamamoto. This ruthless act threw the island into deeper fear, as everyone realized they could be the next target. From this point on, people's focus shifted away from Kazuko and towards the 2 pistols, now the true symbols of power on the island. Kikuichiro, Kazuko's husband, was the most terrified. He knew that if Yamamoto or Yamaguchi ever became displeased with him, they wouldn't hesitate to kill him. In a desperate situation, Kikuichiro devised a bold plan to protect himself and Kazuko. One night, Kikuichiro secretly met with Yamamoto and Yamaguchi, pretending to renounce his marriage with Kazuko and offering her to them. Yamamoto and Yamaguchi were thrilled, even praising Kiku for being intelligent and reasonable. But Kikuichiro knew that forcing both men to share Kazuko would only ignite a greater conflict. Their instincts for dominance would soon turn them from allies into enemies. As expected, it wasn't long before Yamamoto and Yamaguchi began fiercely fighting over control of Kazuko. Insults escalated into violent conflict, and ultimately, Yamaguchi emerged victorious by murdering Yamamoto. With Yamamoto gone, Yamaguchi became the island's sole ruler. He not only possessed Kazuko, but also controlled both pistols. This made him more confident in his ability to suppress the others, but it also fueled growing resentment among the weaker survivors. One day, Yamaguchi was suddenly found dead, floating in the ocean. Officially, it was labeled an accidental drowning, but everyone on the island knew it was an act of revenge. After Yamaguchi's death, the 2 pistols quickly fell into the hands of 2 new men, Nakawa and Iwai. With weapons in hand, they continued the cycle of tyranny on the island. As expected, they not only controlled all resources, but also forced Kazuko to serve them. The same pattern repeated itself, just as it had with Yamamoto and Yamaguchi. Once again, Kazuko was trapped in a cycle of power and violence, becoming an object of control and exploitation. The remaining survivors could only observe in silence, knowing that anyone who dared to resist would pay with their lives. For a little over a month, life on the island seemed stable. However, tension between Nakawa and Iwai began simmering like a ticking time bomb. The pressure of sharing Kazuko and power soon turned them against each other. One day, their conflict erupted into a violent battle. In the end, Iwai emerged victorious, and Nakawa was eliminated permanently. Now, Iwai became the sole ruler of the island, controlling both pistols and Kazuko. However, learning from his predecessors, Iwai became extremely cautious. He never let go of his weapons, always staying alert to potential threats. Every move he made was carefully calculated to prevent an assassination. His extreme caution allowed him to survive for 2 years. But as if by fate, he too was eventually assassinated in a mysterious attack. One morning, Iwai's body was discovered deep in the jungle, showing signs of a fatal attack from behind. Iwai's death once again threw the island into chaos. The 2 pistols became the ultimate prize in a deadly struggle for dominance. The atmosphere was filled with paranoia and bloodshed. In the years that followed, 3 more men died under mysterious circumstances. Everyone knew the real reason: the unending battle for power fueled by the 2 pistols. Unable to endure the fear any longer, the remaining survivors decided to hold a meeting to resolve the crisis. After extensive debate, the group came up with a radical solution. Kazuko would choose one man to marry, and the 2 pistols would be thrown into the ocean, erasing the source of conflict. They hoped that once Kazuko was claimed and the weapons were gone, the island would finally know peace. This was their last chance to restore order. With the plan in motion, Kazuko chose a husband, and the 2 pistols were thrown into the sea. Everyone on the island hoped that life would return to normal. But just a few weeks later, 4 mysterious deaths and disappearances occurred. Some bodies were found under suspicious circumstances, while others were never discovered. This terrified everyone and raised the question, why were people still dying even after the guns had been thrown away? They all realized that the issue wasn't the weapons, but human greed and desire. The number of people on the island had dropped from 32 to 19 in just 5 years. A second meeting was held in a tense atmosphere. After intense debates and analysis, the group concluded that the root cause of all the tragedies was not just the guns, but also the competition for Kazuko. They made a bold decision: eliminate Kazuko. They believed that by removing her, the source of conflict would be resolved, and peace could finally return to the island. The plan was unanimously set to take place the next day. However, one man who deeply loved Kazuko couldn't remain silent. That night, he secretly met with her, revealing the group's plan and warning her to escape immediately if she wanted to live. Upon hearing this, Kazuko turned pale. That very night, she gathered whatever she could carry and fled into the dense jungle. The jungle on Anadahan was vast and treacherous. Spanning nearly 33 square kilometers, it was like a natural labyrinth. Kazuko hid in the mountain crevices, surviving on rainwater and wild fruit, staying far away from those hunting her. In the first few days, the men scoured the island searching for Kazuko, but failed to find her. Their patience gradually wore thin, and they started turning against each other, accusing and blaming one another. Meanwhile, Kazuko continued to struggle for survival in the jungle, relying on her instincts to make it through each day. On the 33rd day of her escape, Kazuko suddenly spotted an American warship anchored off the coast. She immediately climbed a tall tree nearby, waving her clothing frantically and shouting to attract the attention of the US military on the ship. A small boat was dispatched to investigate. When they found Kazuko in an exhausted and panicked state, they immediately brought her aboard and provided medical care. After Kazuko was rescued, the US military discovered that there were still survivors on Anatahan Island. A message was sent to their families, prompting many relatives to write letters informing them that the war had ended and urging them to return home. Over 200 letters were delivered to the island through the US military. However, the people on the island, living in fear and suspicion, believed this was a trap set by the Americans. They refused to leave and continued their isolated existence. On June 26, 1951, one man on the island received a letter that he was certain had been handwritten by his wife. The letter contained personal details only the couple would know, convincing him that the US military was telling the truth. This man tried to persuade the others that the war was truly over. Initially, he faced strong resistance. However, little by little, he managed to make them believe that they had lost and that life on the island could not continue indefinitely. Eventually, the group agreed to surrender to the US military and was rescued from the island. They were taken to a military base in Guam to recover before returning to Japan. The return of the survivors, who had been missing for years, shocked the Japanese public. Many of their families, including their wives, had long assumed they had perished in the war. Some of the wives had even remarried, including Kazuko's former husband, Shoichi. When Japanese media questioned the whereabouts of the 13 men who never returned, the survivors' statements were inconsistent. The conflicting stories fueled public curiosity and suspicion. Under intense pressure from the media, one survivor finally confessed the horrifying truth. The missing men had lost their lives in violent struggles for power, and for Kazuko, on the island. The media quickly spread the shocking revelation. The case became a nationwide scandal, with extensive reports detailing the gruesome events that took place on the island. Kazuko, the only woman on the island, suddenly became the center of public attention. She was given multiple nicknames such as the Queen of Anadahan, the Woman with 32 Faces, and the Enchantress of Men. While some media outlets showed sympathy for Kazuko, arguing that she had no other choice in such a dire situation, the majority of the public condemned her. She was viewed as the primary cause of all the tragedies that had unfolded on the island. After returning to Japan, Kazuko attempted to rebuild her life but could never escape the shadow of her past. She became the subject of endless gossip and criticism, despite the fact that she was merely a victim of unfortunate circumstances. In 1952, Kazuko received an invitation to participate in the stage play Island of Anadahan. The play recreated the horrifying story of the island, with Kazuko playing the lead role, retelling her own life story. The play quickly became a nationwide sensation, attracting widespread attention from audiences across Japan. Kazuko toured the country for 2 years. Every time she appeared on stage, she was not only admired, but also harshly criticized by those who still saw her as the cause of the island's tragedy. In 1953, the story of Anadahan Island was adapted into the film This Is the Truth About Anadahan, with Kazuko once again playing herself. The film depicted the horrifying events on the island, though certain details were altered to better suit audiences. After a few years in the entertainment industry, Kazuko decided to retire, unable to endure the continued public scrutiny and pressure. To make a living, she moved to Tokyo and became a dancer in nightclubs, leading a quieter and more obscure life. In March 1974, Kazuko passed away at the age of 50 due to a brain tumor. Her death marked the tragic end of a life filled with turmoil, from the horrors of Anadahan Island to years of public judgment and criticism. Even after her death, Kazuko left behind a story that society could never forget. She became the embodiment of the eternal struggle between human instincts and morality, a symbol reminding us of the thin line between civilization and savagery. So, what do you think? Was Kazuko a victim or a mastermind? Did she deserve the relentless criticism she faced? Share your thoughts in the comments below. This concludes the video. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel to follow more thrilling stories. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.